Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Impractical Machinist podcast. My name is Patrick. You can find me on Instagram as @JobShopperTN.
I'm Cameron from Machinists Cool. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, we would appreciate a 5-star rating.
I'm Bradley with Marvel Machining. Also, if you're on YouTube, be sure to give us a like and subscribe to the Practical Machinist YouTube channel.
On this episode, we're going to do a lightning round of questions from our Instagram fans and friends. The 3 big ticket questions are going to be how to no-quote job, how to diversify your machining business to protect against slowdowns, and where you should and shouldn't spend good money on measuring tools.
Yeah.
All right, lads, how we doing?
Good.
How about you?
Hanging in there. Brad, you almost done with that big job you've been working on?
Got about a week or 2 left. Finally.
That's what you said last time.
I know. It's been a nightmare.
I forgot you were
a nightmare. I wish I forgot about it too.
Yeah. Hey, you won't be saying that when that paycheck hits.
Yeah, it'll be nice, but when I took the job on and there was, like 6,000 key inserts, I didn't think it was that bad, but my fucking arms were tired trying to hammer them things in, and there's 4 different sizes, and each part has 15. It's a nightmare.
Why aren't you having your kids do that?
They probably miss and hit the part.
Yeah,
that's my worry. My wife has been helping because there's aero glaze on it, a 2-part epoxy. You got to put on the key inserts and then put it in. And I was sitting there hammering, and I kind of put my arm down because it's sore after an hour of doing it. She's like, "Do you want me to do it?" I'm like, "No, I don't want you to hit the part and scrap the part after we install." But I wrap my whole hand around it, so if I do miss, I'm gonna smash a finger.
Your finger versus the cost of a part.
There's some expensive ass parts, Pat.
I guarantee it. Oh, I know. All the coating and machining and everything. I guarantee it.
Have you ever seen those? Have you ever seen those chisels that have a handle on it with a guard for your hand?
Yeah,
like demolition stuff.
Yep.
Maybe you could 3D print a little guard for it and start having your kids do it.
Yeah.
I wonder how long it would take my kids to hammer them things in. They do. They make a tool, and at this point, I kind of wish I would have bought it. It's just it screws it in and then it drives it in too, all in one. But it's $8,000, and I'm like, shit, man. At this point, I wish I would just bought it.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where you're this far into it now.
You
don't want to spend money on it.
No.
But you're like, damn, 40 parts ago, 50 parts ago, had I thought to do that, that would have saved me a lot of time.
It would have been so nice.
Could you buy it, use it, and then return it?
Right.
It's not at Harbor Freight.
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
Yep.
Oh, man.
Walmart.
Somebody needs to do something where you can rent it from them, like these type of tools that you're only going to use once or twice, like a manufacturer and rental.
It'd be cool if there was a machining specific tool rental.
Yes.
You could rent thread gauges for those weird threads that you're probably never going to make again. Or
3816.
Right. Yeah. 3816, Pat. Or, I don't know, just random stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that the other day. We needed a drawbar pressure gauge for, this had been 2 months ago now. Whenever we put the new spindle in the feeler mill, the horizontal, I was thinking it would be really nice to be able to check the drawbar pressure. And Aaron, CNC repairman, he rents them. And
I was going to say he rents them.
Right. That's a great thing to do.
Yep.
But it got me thinking, you can get one of those pressure gauges for $300-400. I could actually see, since he's up in the, Pacific Northwest, I could see, that might actually be a thing folks could do. Buy some of those tools, get a set of what do you call it, Brad? A UNJF thread. Get a set of thread gauges for that.
Yeah. And then I guess the downside to running something like that is dealing with people returning that equipment.
Yeah.
It's I want your bank account information. If you don't return it in time, I'm charging the full price of this tool.
Well, that's how equipment rentals are. If you rent a small tool, and then they take your card.
Yeah.
So.
But depends on the equipment,
Yep.
if you're renting a piece of equipment that's $15,000.
Yeah.
Then they can charge your car all you want to, but if the money's not there, it ain't gonna work. But
But I mean, most of the small hand tools, I mean, you're gonna,
yeah, like if you rent from like O'Reilly's, for
Yeah.
example, like a coil spring compressor kit, then you're going to pay for the entire price of the tool. And then if you don't return it, you've already bought it. If you do return it, then you get your money back.
Yep. I've done that at O'Reilly. I don't remember what I was renting. I think it was a ball joint press.
Yeah.
I rented it like 4 times in like a 2-month period. And I'm like, you know, fuck, I'm just gonna keep it.
Right.
I still have it. I've had it for like 10
Yeah.
years now.
Oh, I've got whatever that brand is that I don't remember what that brand is, but there's a specific brand that they always use for all those rental tools. And I've got like 5 or 6 cases of the like just different tools. I got a ball joint press. I've got
Mhm.
a pickle fork for separating like pitman arms and stuff like that. And I don't know, all sorts of stuff. I've got like 3 different coil spring compression kits. Just because it's gotten pretty sketchy. You're like, have you ever used those?
Yes, they're so
You use the ones where it's like the individual pieces, where it's like 2 little arms with a piece of all thread
yeah,
or with a
yeah.
ball head. So I've used those before and had it like slip around to one side,
Oh yeah.
which is super sketchy. So I've gone and gotten more, and then I've got like 5 or 6 of them on there, and like it's definitely not heavy duty enough to be compressing this spring that I'm trying to compress. Then they got some where it's like 2 forks to try to compress. So I've got all kinds of shit from them.
I
Hello,
was
everyone.
renting that a few times, and the guy was like, you know, if you just keep it, you just don't get your money back. And I'm like,
Right.
all right, cool.
That's what I figured out. And then I was like, man, I really don't feel like driving back to O'Reilly's at 9:45 and beating it, getting there as soon as they close.
Yeah.
I'll just keep it.
But it'd be cool if, like you said, thread gauges, just some basic stuff that you don't want to spend the money on. You're only gonna use once.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
Maybe there is something like that out there already. We just don't know about it.
Well, we'll
Could be.
find
I
out.
mean,
soon.
I feel like
Common.
there's definitely a need. Yeah, right. I feel like there's definitely a need for that. I feel like somebody would have come up with that by now. There's no way that I'm the one thinking of like that idea.
Right now, today. it just
Yeah,
came up.
exactly.
you never know. And I mean, sometimes stuff like that is hard to find. Like we were trying to find a source for heat treating here recently, and it's just hard to around here. There's probably 50 of them, around Brad, but it's
Yeah.
just around. Depending on where you are, the internet is kind of still new to some people. So
that's definitely true.
I feel like we
And-
had a question last week we didn't get to about borrowing tools. Do you remember that?
Well, I was thinking about that because I have had to borrow a lot of stuff from my previous employer here recently, and it's very awkward. I don't think they mind at all. I mean, the day I left, the owner told me, "Hey, if you ever want to come in here and use one of our machines, feel free,"
Oh, nice.
which is really nice, But it's a little awkward because it's like we really shouldn't have to do this.
Yeah.
This week, I had to borrow. Mark was machining on the tombstone for our horizontal, and we wanted to make sure that the head's square and not, machining the tombstone like this or like this. We don't have anything to measure that big. I mean, he's got mics up to like 9 inches, maybe 12. I mean, above that, we just have a tape measure. But at my last job, I mean, they've got a vernier caliper that's either a 60 or 72 inch.
Nice.
They've got a mic set up to 24. So I grabbed their 12 to 16. And fortunately, we didn't need to do any adjusting. It machined it pretty nicely. But it's good to know. But yeah, I was wondering, how often is it that you have to borrow tools from other nearby shops?
Somebody asked a question. I don't know if it was on a story post or questions. They asked about thoughts on sharing or borrowing tools from local shops,
Mhm.
which, I mean, I guess I've shared stuff with a buddy, Ryan, that I know pretty well. I guess I don't know if a random person reached out what I'd borrow. I'd probably borrow it to them. I mean, we got a local Minnesota machine Facebook group where people are throwing stuff up there on a Sunday. Hey, I need this tap really bad. I'm in the middle of a job. And, I've given a couple guys some random size taps, and usually they'll just either order a new one or they'll pay me, which, I mean, the one guy that stopped by once and grabbed one, I don't remember what it was. I gave him like 4 taps. He was doing something in a lathe. And he's like, I'll just pay you for them. I'm like, don't worry about it. I said, just, if you order some tools, just ship me 4 new ones. But then when I walked out later that day, you left $50 on my counter.
Oh,
But he was like,
That's
"You
nice.
saved me." He said, "I have to have these parts for my customer tomorrow, and I can't find the taps." I don't even remember what size it was. Something odd.
That
There
is
was like
nice.
15 people on there. Like, "Hey, I have some. Just come get them." I was the closest to them, so
yeah. I like stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, we all, we are competitors, but we all have to be there for each other until somebody screws us over. And then at that point, it's like, all right, I'm not dealing with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you kind of get a feel for people as you deal with them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You start talking to them and be like, this guy seems a little shisty.
I actually remember, I think maybe the first year that I worked at a shop, I think we actually rented time on a machine from another shop. Like they had I think a bigger lathe than we had, and we had some kind of repair job that we took on and realized afterward, oh crap, that won't fit on our lathe.
So did you guys have
So
someone go use it?
yeah, we actually sent our manual machinist then to that shop, and he did all the work on their lathe. And I don't know that they even charged us for it. I think it was just well, you guys will help us out down the
Yeah.
road. But yeah, I mean, you got to be there for one another, man.
I've heard of people renting time on machines. I think John Fetty's done that. I think he rented some time on Dan. I don't even know how to say his last name. Local here. He rented some time on a machine. I've let John come use my tool grinder. He's came and relieved some tools here a few times.
Nice. Now that I think about it, we actually, it was funny. You'd almost think I was reapplying for a job there because I swear I was at Galleon's like 5 times in the last 2 weeks because I had to, get that mic, and then there's something else I had them do. And then I ended up, when we got those parts back from heat treat, and I'm going to get into that another day. The wound's too fresh right now. But we had some really bad luck with a heat treater recently, and we decided to check the hardness ourselves. Unfortunately, all we have is hardness testing files, which I don't feel too good about them. Well, my previous employer has a nice Mitutoyo harness tester, and so I messaged my good friend over there, and I was like, "Hey, we're in a bit of a pickle. You mind if we come over and use your harness tester?" First, I had to ask him what the weight limit was because these parts are like 90 pounds. And he said, "Yeah, come on in." So Mark and I loaded up in the van, brought the parts over there, and checked them. Fun little 5-minute road trip, but it's just another example. If I hadn't worked there for 10 years and then came here, I don't know how open they'd have been to that, but it works.
Most shops I think are pretty open to it.
Yeah.
I would hope so.
I mean, like you said earlier, I mean, we're competitors, but do you really know if you're a competitor to another shop? I mean, I don't know who I'm quoting against really.
Right.
Like, I don't know if they're doing the same work. I mean, I might know one or two that does similar work, but I don't know if I'm actually quoting against them.
Yeah.
It seems like most shops you walk into, like you walk in and be like, "Hey, what's going on, guys? Would you be willing to help me out with this thing? Like, let me borrow your hardness tester or whatever." Or like, "Yeah, sure, dude.
Yeah.
Sounds good." And then you'll have
Yep.
those random guys who are like, "No, we don't help any outside companies." Yeah,
That's like the stores that don't have the bathroom you can use.
exactly.
Not-
Yeah,
not-
that same
never
exact.
customers.
Yeah.
Same thought process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, buddy. All right, we'll start with kind of a softer question here to get started.
Nice.
SST 133. His question was speed up finishing with a ball mill, hard material, mold injection industry. So his question is, how do I finish faster with a ball mill on hard material?
You don't.
Viagra.
Honestly, yeah. I will say, depending on how you're doing it, you might look at a different type of tool. Maybe you could use a lens form tool, or maybe you could use a barrel cutter.
Yeah, I was gonna say a lens form tool too, but you don't get much more speed out of them though. Like their actual recommended feeds and speeds aren't much better than I think you actually run them slower, but you get a hell of a lot better finish.
Yeah. But you
My
also
thought-
have a much bigger radius than you would with a ball nose. So you should, in theory, be able to do a much wider step over.
You're
But it also-
supposed to be. I think I sent that to you. The one lens mill, like the actual step over, wasn't much bigger than what I was doing for a 1/2 inch end mill or
Really?
ball mill.
Well, and I guess really how big of a radius difference is it? Because don't they go to like a 2-inch radius or something, or like
Yeah.
a 3-inch radius on the bottom? It's not like, it's almost flat, but you wouldn't want it to be almost flat
Yeah.
because then you wouldn't be able to finish 3D geometry. So
Yeah, I think the
Right.
one that I was running it's got a 1-inch radius and it's recommended to do like a 20,000 step over.
yeah, I think short of like using a barrel mill in like a 5-axis scenario, it's kind of difficult to speed something like that up. One thing I have done that's made things faster is use like a 6-flute bull nose. But when you're doing mold injection, I can't imagine you're gonna be able to hit that much stuff with a bull nose.
No.
And then you're gonna end up having to swap
Sure.
tools and switch to like a ball nose to get down into like the bottom of pockets and stuff like that.
The biggest thing would probably be, try to maximize the efficiency of the stock you're leaving beforehand. If you can do like a 3D roughing thing to just leave little scallops everywhere, and then maybe just make sure that you're using tooling made for hard machining. Like, YG1's got a good line for that. OSG's got a good line for that. Plenty of manufacturers do. That goes a long way.
Yeah.
I actually had to remachine a bend die that was hardened here like a few weeks ago. And, we usually harden them to like the mid 50s. So it's hard. It's not super hard. It's not like it's in the 60s, Rockwell. But I was actually surprised how quick I could push it just with a plain Haas 4-flute ball end mill. It was a Korean one, not a Taiwanese one. But I could run like 250, 300 feet per minute and be fine.
Feet per minute?
Yeah.
Damn.
I know that's not the RPM, so I'd have to back calculate what the RPM is.
Are they still hand polishing molds? Or is tooling good enough now to get a
Definitely don't work in the mold world, so I couldn't tell you. But I know I've seen like videos and stuff of people like finishing like shit straight out of the machine, and it's insane how good it looks.
looks like a damn mirror?
Mm-hmm.
Back in my day, decades ago, Pat,
Like PCD tooling.
you'd have to like fucking hand polish it. It was annoying. I didn't do much of it, but I remember sitting there just going down in different paper. I mean, I don't remember what it was, but it was damn near paper, and you'd put some, I don't know what the fuck it was, some sort of oil on it to polish it.
Man.
Yep. The old days.
Labor.
Yeah. Yep. Elbow grease.
Yep.
All
I would,
right.
I would think with PCD tooling, you can get pretty far.
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing. It depends on what what finish are you going for.
That's also true. I mean, if it needs to be bright and shiny, or if it just needs to be smooth, those two things don't always go together.
No. I think there's a lot of people that don't understand, using a profilometer, checking something, what actually is a 63 RA to a 125 or a 15. I mean, you can get a lot of parts they're standard 125. Like you can fucking do a 30,000 step over, no problem. And it's like, I had some parts not too long ago, big dished out, and they were calling out a 125. I think I used a 3/4 ball and I did like a 60,000 step over.
Yeah.
I mean, I could feel it with my hand, but it still met the 125.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah. Like shiny, and like if something's shiny and you can see like the reflection of your hand in it, that doesn't necessarily mean you've got a good finish.
Yeah.
It's true. So, all right. And probably to wrap that one up, I would say the other thing to look at would be, if you have a nice enough machine, you might be able to go a step above carbide, like Cam was saying, PCD tooling, ceramics, Cermet, that kind of thing. Might be able to get up into that range, and even if it's the same step over and all that, maybe you can run faster. That'd be the other thing. But it does get into having to have a nice high-end machine. So,
yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm not sure what the accuracy requirements are for mold making as far as the machine goes. But I would think you would need a machine that's relatively precise.
Yeah, they should go hand in hand for sure.
So, I mean, if think about trying to blend all those different surfaces together. You
All
could
right.
you could even see a few tenths difference by
Mhm.
eye. It's pretty amazing what you can actually see and feel.
Absolutely. We'll move on to the next one here. So this is one of the heavy hitters. Tyler Mantooth. How to diversify your business so that when your primary gets slow, you have enough fill in to keep going. This is actually something really apt for us right now because we are very slow. Uh, it seems like the tube bender industry right now is just in a complete halt. Unfortunately, because of like the whole tariff situation. Um, we've gotten a ton of quotes. Nobody wants to spend any money. So it's kind of like, well, at this company, tube bender tooling is all the machining that we've ever really done, other than just little piddly crap to refurbish a machine. So it's kind of like the bender tooling is really nice because it pays better than most of your just job shop machining, but it is a little bit limited, and it is one like little niche thing. So we're looking into working with Xometry. We've been working on that here recently, but that's just one thing. So I can also share from my last job, they got bottlenecked into the marine world a lot. Like at one point, 60 something percent of their entire business was between two customers, and both of those customers were basically they built boat trailers and things like that. So, and then when those two customers or that industry slowed down, those two customers slowed down, and all of a sudden we went from being super busy, and it was mainly fab, but still super busy, packed all the time, to nothing. And that was really hard to deal with. So, kind of curious what you guys have seen in that regard.
I mean, I don't really have much input for that just because I haven't really done the work to diversify a business. Most of the diversifying that we've had happen, if that's the right way to use that, I don't know. Yeah. The extra customers that we've gotten that are from different industries have been really through word of mouth or knowing somebody directly, or even some of our tooling vendors have gone into shops and they need like some fixturing made or something. And so it's difficult to like for those big companies to just add somebody as a vendor and have fixturing made. So they'll go through like their tooling vendors and stuff. Since the tooling vendors know so many machine shops. And so I've had from two different vendors actually. They'd come to me and be like, "Hey, can you quote making some fixturing for this company?" I'm like, yeah, of course, we'll do it. Um, so then we actually make the fixturing for the company, get paid by the tooling vendor because they're already a vendor for the end customer. So we don't have to add that whole process in of creating me as a vendor and the whole in-depth credit check and all that shit. So yeah, I just drop ship directly, or not drop ship. I ship directly to the customer, get paid by the tooling vendor, and
Hmm.
there you go.
That's really interesting. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, but
Huh.
I've never like asked for it or anything. I've never been like, "Hey, find me some work." They might call me and ask me how things are going. I'd be like, "Oh, about medium level of busyness, that sort of thing." And they're like, "All right, cool." Then they call me back, a few weeks later, like, "Hey, I'm over here at this customer. This is what happened a couple of weeks ago. Like, hey, I'm over at this customer. They need some fixturing design. Is that something you would do?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." Like I designed it for
Hmm.
ourselves. I've designed fixturing for ourselves all the time, so I would do it for somebody else, no problem. He's like, "Okay, cool. Well, I'm over here, and here's this guy. Let me put it on speakerphone, and we talk together." He kind of told me what they needed, and yeah, now we're gonna be designing and machining some fixturing for him. Just because it's a big production shop, and well, it's a company that has their own product lines, and so it's not exactly easy for them to. I'm assuming it's not exactly easy for them to just hop on a machine and make some fixturing or have
Sure.
time to design all the fixturing. But anyway, so yeah, that worked out to where now we're making fixturing for them. Hopefully, it'll turn into even more fixturing for them in the future.
Mhm.
But um, typically, though, from those tooling vendors, the two different ones that I've had, like actually reach out to have me do this, it's been fixturing specifically, not necessarily parts. So, although I have talked to one of them before, and he said that he has had customers that are like just overwhelmed with jobs, and they've talked to their tooling vendor, be like, "Hey, a bunch of machine shops. You know anybody that would be good for this? Like,
Mhm.
we can sub this work out to them." So maybe talking to your tooling vendors if you have a good relationship with them would be a good route.
It's a good idea because I mean we've been in that spot at my last job. We've made plenty of fixturing, but we were just so busy one time that we actually sourced it out to another. It was really more of an engineering firm that happened to have machining capabilities in house, and I mean they did a great job.
Yeah,
So that's interesting. Definitely make use of all the contacts you have out there.
absolutely. And like if you've got I've got 2 or 3 tooling vendors that I mainly use. I've got pretty good relationships with a couple of them, and so if I'm like, like say somebody comes to me with some mold work and I have no clue what I'm doing making molds. These guys are in different shops every single day of the week, talking to all sorts of different customers, people who have fabrication shops with some machining. So if I need like some fab work done, I could talk to him and be like, hey, who do you know? He'll probably know somebody, or he'll be in a mold shop or whatever. So they're all over the place. They know all sorts of different people at different companies. They're a pretty good resource to tap into whenever you're searching for, help with different projects. So
I guess, I mean, depending on the size of your shop, it can be hard to diversify. I mean, I struggled with it early on. I mean, I had my primary customer that kept me plenty busy. And then if other customers came across, I'd kind of push them away, or I'd no quoted or quoted higher just because I didn't want to interrupt my primary customer. I didn't want to let them down. But at some point you have to. If your primary gets slow and you don't have work, what are you going to do? But like Cam said, talk to people take on the work and just find another shop to do it if you have to source it out. I mean, I was turning away turning work for years, and I decided, fuck it, I'm going to find a shop that can do the turning work for me. So now when I get turning work, I just send it to them. I'm not telling this new customer no. And I mean, it was a majority of it's turning, but there's still probably 25% of milling that I get out of it now. And I still, sometimes I know the prices I want, and I make money off of it. I make 20% off just sourcing parts out. And then if you got a good relationship with other shops in your area and you're overwhelmed, I mean, there's shops always looking for work. Just find one that can do it for you, help you out. And sometimes that turns into them giving you work back too.
true. I guess really the main concern I would have in those scenarios is, what the shop you're subbing to work out to is going to want to make those parts, like what their price is going to be. And then, because like if you accept the job and then you realize, damn, I don't have the time to be to meet, I can't meet this deadline. I've got too much going on. And then you start talking to other shops to sub it out, and they're, quoting for the same price or higher than you, or maybe like barely lower, which barely lower, you're still making your customer happy. You're making a few bucks off of it. That'll still work. But that's the thing I would be worried about, is what their price is going to end up being.
I mean, if you build a good enough relationship with them, I mean, like you said, at the end of the day, if you're going to be late on it, prioritize getting it done on time. Even if you don't make money, even if you have to take a little bit of a loss, you're making your customer happy.
Right.
I did some work for a local shop here, and he'd come to me like, hey, I quoted, I mean, and he obviously could have been lying, but he was like, hey, I quoted this at $5,000. Can you do it for that? He said, he said, I don't need to make money on it. I just need to get it to my customer on time. And sometimes I look at it and it's like, I'd have probably been at $6,000, but I'm helping you out and I can do it.
Yeah.
So it kind of ties back into what we were talking about in the beginning. You got to be there for each other as shops. That's funny. And to be fair, if you've got your rate figured correctly, even if you break even, you're still making headway. You're still covering your cost to operate at some point. So never a bad thing.
Yeah. I mean, even that job, I ran it, I kind of look back at my numbers and I still made, I think I made like $200 an hour on it. So it was, I mean, the 6,000, 6,500 where I would have been at was high.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
So I guess
considering your overhead, I mean, 200 an hour, I'm sure is making plenty good money.
Oh yeah.
So, keep your options open and keep an open mind. If you can't take on this part of a job, find a place that can.
Yeah. And do it early.
Yeah, do it early on. Don't wait till the last minute.
3 days due.
Yeah.
Yep. Because then it's going to be way more expensive. Yep. And I would say try to avoid pigeonholing yourself into where, you know, 60, 70, 80% of your work is from even one industry, not necessarily one customer, but sometimes that's difficult.
Yeah.
You might live in an area with mainly medical customers or mainly, marine customers or whatever it might be. You just kind of think ahead and have some sort of backup plan to pivot to.
And you never know where you're going to meet somebody. Like, I met a guy at the gym, and I'm making parts.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're making parts for him.
Yeah.
Thought this was going somewhere else.
Nah, yeah, we spent some time in the sauna. We're good buddies now. But no, he's actually he does custom leather work. And so, like, the first stuff that I did for him, I did on the side. There's just like a side project for myself. I just don't have the time for it anymore. So anything now, I'm actually running through the shop for the most part. There's still a couple of little things I'm doing for him on the side. Like he's got me making he has some customer that just wants all sorts of random cool stuff made. So he wants a cane made out of snake wood. And so I've got 2 pieces of snake wood now I'm gonna turn, and then turn like one's gonna have brass furniture on it or fixed, whatever you would call it, like parts on it, and then the other one's gonna be stainless. And so I'm gonna basically turn the wood piece between centers just to the largest diameter I can. It's just basically a long rectangle right now, but so turn it to like roughly 1.25 inch diameter and leave a little bit extra on it. Then I'll make the brass pieces that go on the end or stainless, whatever, and then turn the whole thing all at once, so it's all just one continuous, like diameter and smooth and everything. But yeah, so just random stuff like that. And he's got like a bag that I'm gonna do, like, I'll probably do this on the side too. But it's a handbag that somebody once made, and they want it to have a brass knuckle like handle on it. So we got to make like the part where the brass knuckle is going to attach to on the bag, because they want to be able to just like pull the brass knuckles off real quick. But they won't even look like brass knuckles if you pull them off though, because like the way it's going to attach with like a dovetail and stuff and some detents. But it'll have like that brass knuckle like look to it, and like your fingers will go through like the holes and all that.
Or you can find one of them on Temu.
Probably, I don't know. We're gonna do it all out of bronze though. That way it'll like patina and everything. And then the one that we got running through the shop right now is actually a backgammon set that he once made. So this guy wants a backgammon board made, and he wants it to have like all the backgammon pieces to be Porsche wheels. So we're gonna like machine little Porsche wheels to go on there, and then that's a carbon fiber board with stainless and brass inlays. And so I'm gonna have the stainless and brass inlays water jet, and then get a piece of carbon fiber and hold it on a vacuum plate, and then just machine out the pockets for the brass and stainless inlays. And then from there, he's got somebody doing like making like the frame for it out of MDF, and he's gonna wrap it in leather.
Wow.
And that's gonna be a good little job. So you never know where it's gonna come from. Just some random dude that I was talking to at the gym. We'd run into each other every now and then and just kind of shoot the shit. And then he found out what I did, and he's like, "Hey, I actually think I need some machine work done." And then here we are.
So you met a dude at the gym, and now you're turning his wood.
Yep, that's right. Handle his wood for him
That's sus, man.
with great care.
All right.
Go on to the
So from our friend Zeke on Instagram, how do you no quote a job? Give a good reason why and how to get it quoted or lie. So basically what he's asking, if I can translate our redneck English here, say you get a job, an RFQ in the shop, and you're like, I don't know that we can do this for whatever reason it may be. How do you handle it? Do you tell them,
just be scheduled?
Do you tell them the reason is because it's, your workload is too high, because you don't feel like you're equipped to do it, you don't have the talent to do it, or whatever it may be. And my experience with no quoting is like my last job, they didn't want to no quote anything. They also never really wanted to find a shop to do work that we weren't really equipped for. So a lot of times it was, just slap a number on it and hope we can figure it out and not end up in the red.
I think everybody's done that.
Oh, absolutely. And more often than not, we'd end up in the red.
A lot of times when you throw a number at it that's too high, thinking, we'll figure out if it comes through. We'll make it work. And then it comes through and it's like, shit.
Yeah, like
I
3 minutes later, you get a PO.
Like,
Well,
can you at least wait
Should've gone higher.
4 hours? Like,
Right.
I thought it was high. Now you made me feel like I'm too low. Can we renegotiate this price now?
Yeah, no quoting is definitely tricky because it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, Brad. You don't want to upset the customer because they need that done. And if you tell them, I don't want to take on this job, some folks may take that as like, well, I guess you don't want to do my business. Some folks may not understand why a job is so difficult or, not doesn't suit your shop or whatever. But that's where a lot of times honesty is the best policy.
I wouldn't recommend saying it's something you can't do, because then you're telling the customer you can't do something, and they might think about it when it comes up next time or something more. I usually use schedule, like, hey, I just can't. Most of my customers, they give me a due date. I don't really give them due dates. They have the date they want it in hand. So typically if I see something and it's just like, no, I can't get it done by that time, it's going to take me, my schedule's full right now. Sometimes they come back and say, hey, like, what's your, and it's like, well, another 4 weeks. Like, I really don't want to do this. So I'm just going to throw out a random ass number now. But I don't know. I try not to say I can't make something. And at that point, sometimes I've had something where I can't make, and it's like, okay, well, I'm going to let them know. I'm going to no quote this. I can't fit in the schedule at this time. But then I'll send it to another shop and have them quote it, just so if it does come back, I'm prepared, ready for a shop that does have the capability to do it. And sometimes it might even just be like a wire EDM op that I don't have capability to do.
Yeah.
Or I've done a couple Swiss jobs where, now I got a customer or a shop that does Swiss work for me. But before, I'd just tell them, no, I can't do it right now.
Yeah. I like to lean towards I don't have a problem saying like we can't do something if it's something that we literally can't do. But if it's something like EDM work or whatever, like, we'll still take the job and figure out the EDM work.
Yep.
Not ourselves, we got shops we sub that kind of stuff out to. But if it's like, say too big for our machines or something that's just more complex than we're willing to handle, like, I'd love to make the parts for you, but unfortunately it's just outside of the scope of what we're capable of,
Yeah.
and, maybe if I know another shop that I can recommend them to, like, hey, maybe these guys can take care of you. Try to help them, even if you're not going to do the work,
Yeah.
try to
Definitely.
get them there and help them meet their end goal, which is having the parts in hand. Right.
For sure. That's a good way to look at it, Kim. That way you can still you're still helping them because you can be point them in the right direction,
Yeah.
but you're just not the guy you can also work with them. I remember looking at the job for a customer one time that was just because of the nature of the part, it was a shaft with a block on one end and a lot of just, super deep reach, tight tolerance features and stuff. It was going to be a nightmare, especially in a shop with older machines that aren't in good shape. And of course, at that time we needed work. We didn't really want to say no. And the CEO probably would have got mad if he found out we said no. And so we actually got with the customer. It's like, well, this is why this job's so difficult, and this is why we can't feel like we can quote it. But if we could look at changing the design, then we could look at quoting it then. And they actually did come back and re-engineer it as a two-piece design that bolted together. And we quoted at that point, and we never did get it. I think we got one of the pieces and not the other, which is funny. The other thing I'll throw out, apparently a lot of people don't know this. You can throw out the option of, here's an estimate. We're going to charge you this much an hour to make it. And we're going to be between here and here. And obviously, there's still a chance that you can go way deep in the hole and screw yourself. But at the very least, as long as you're honest about it, if you tell them a range of between, say, it's going to be between 30 and 50 hours at whatever an hour plus material, and you end up at 45 hours, they're happy. They got their part. You didn't lose money because you underestimated it.
Right.
You also have a better chance of getting the job because if you got to lock in on one quote, you might put 60 hours on it to make sure you don't lose your shirt.
Yep.
But you may not get it because that's too high.
Yeah. That's actually a pretty good idea. And not all customers are willing to do that. Like, giant companies are gonna be like, I don't know how to put that in my spreadsheet.
Exactly.
But if it's
That's a good one.
yeah, but if it's somebody you can work with, that's a pretty good idea. I like
Mhm.
that.
There's a
I
few
mean,
jobs out there at customers that do time and material.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Now, whenever I think of no quoting a job, I think of those parts that are like, this part is just ridiculous, and it's gonna be a huge pain in the ass, and it's probably, I can tell just by looking at it that it's gonna turn into something that's gonna take way more time than we anticipate.
Mhm.
So we may make money on it, we may not. Ultimately, I'd rather just avoid the headache.
Yeah.
And in that
Absolutely.
scenario, I don't really know what to tell the customer because I'm like, I don't want to do this because it's going to be a huge pain in the ass. Isn't really like a a good way to answer that. But
The tooling needed for this job exceeds what I'm willing to quote you guys because it'd be too ridiculous.
staff, something like that.
I've said that a few times. Like I've had
No,
someone
it's
come across with custom tooling, and it's like that's just too much. Like
well,
the amount of tooling I am going to have into this is probably more than you're willing to pay. Probably better off finding somebody that has the tooling already.
Right.
and in Zeke's case, since they mainly do castings, I mean, he works at a foundry. I could actually see that being a really easy way to get out of it if you want, because that's where a lot of your cost is in the casting world is
Yeah.
making your molds and your tooling and your masters and stuff like that. So
Yeah, but I feel like that's kind of like us quoting the machining of a part, the general machining of a part. Because for him, every casting he makes, he's got to make tooling for. So
mhm.
that's just part of the quote. If this is the first time we're making this casting, then we got to make the tooling.
That's true. I guess it depends on if they're asking for a quote for casting one part or something.
Yeah. Which
Does
is
he
Not
just make
real.
the casting and then the castings go somewhere else and somebody else runs them, or do they actually run the parts?
I think he does both because he machines some of his castings too. So he'll provide the finished part or provide just the casting.
Damn.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, he's into that whole casting thing that everybody else hates, except for weirdos.
Yeah.
I'd like to see
Yeah.
him do that. I always see the video of the guy putting his hand through the molten metal going in the casting. You ever seen them?
No.
Zeke, I want to
No,
see you do that. I'm gonna send it to you guys. You never seen that?
No. Was he like
apparently
dip
not.
his hand in water and then do it or something?
No, I don't.
Put his hand
I
through
don't
it
know.
with it?
Maybe it's AI. Maybe it's fake. I'm
Oh,
gonna find
yeah.
it. I'm never gonna find it, but I'm
Can't even
trying to
tell these
find it.
days. I may.
But it's just some molten metal pouring out, and the guy just sitting there just karate chopping through it.
Huh. This will be a good one for Brad since he's so old. Austin Thacker 05 says how different CNC machining and CNC machines were from the 80s to 90s to now.
Have you ran a machine from the 80s or 90s?
I ran for all.
90s aren't that bad, but
Yeah.
80s, I mean, God, they
No,
sound
not
like
80s. I've ran Fadals and like mayhem stuff, obviously.
them Fadals with the space bar might as well be from the 50s.
Right. No, I like
I ran a
Fadals, man.
I ran an 80, I
easy.
think it was an 83 Morisiki in a thing. I mean, every move was like clunk, clunk, clunk.
Yeah.
I think they actually just got rid of it. I threw it up on the group because they were
Oh yeah, I saw that.
that old.
Yeah,
I think it was an 83.
That same machine, the bigger version of that, I don't know the models. There's a shop up the street from us where we always get our material dropped off at because our driveway is all ridiculous. They've got two of those facing each other, cabinets removed and like sheet metal cutouts. They can put long bars on it, but they're still running them today. And the guy there, like all of their programming is done by hand there. They only got a few CNCs. But yeah, they're still running them.
Yeah.
Creating keyways and stuff like that in the shafts.
So I'm gonna say, that's actually one of the biggest differences that I've seen because, even though I've not been doing this for nearly as long as Brad, I mean, I've seen machines from CNC machines. I think the oldest I've ran is from '97. This stupid lathe that we have here. But like I ran 2000 machines, 2001 up to 2021, I think is the newest. And actually, one of the biggest things I've noticed is things get more intuitive.
Yep.
Even on HOTS, which has by and large been the same since, they were first brought around. But if you look at like a 2001 Haas control, it's fairly intuitive, but there's nothing really telling you where to go, what to do. But then if you look at like a next gen control Haas, like RVF4 is here, most of the time the screen has little keys on it that tell you, if you want to load a program, hit this key. If you want to do this function, hit this key. and it removes some of that, all the stuff that you've got to just keep in your head
Yeah.
of how to make it happen.
Yeah. That's especially appreciative whenever you're the person in charge of people learning this stuff.
Absolutely.
And like, it doesn't really matter how smart you are. If I show you how to, uh, you know, set up your work coordinate and your tool lengths and load programs on a Fanuc, you're not going to get it the first time. There's just too much stuff, too many random button presses, and it doesn't
Mhm.
guide you through it. So having something where it's kind of like, hey, if you want to do this, go here. Pretty
Mhm.
nice.
I mean, that's the biggest
Right.
thing that's changed over the years. The controls are just so much easier to use. I mean, a machine is a machine. It's going to move X, Y, Z, A, whatever. It's going to move. But it's getting program in there, setting your offsets, your tool offsets. You have to put in a radius or diameter offset. I mean, a lot of old machines you had to, and that was always a pain to do.
Yeah.
Every tool.
Can I derail us for a minute and tell you a story?
Yeah.
All right. So the man that owns the shop I started working at, Mr. Gallion, he started machining in the 60s. He still does it today. I mean, he's still at it. And I remember him telling me a story several times of when he worked at Oak Ridge. That's where he spent basically all his machining career, was at Y12. He actually was machining what they call moon boxes. If you ever go to, there's a museum in Oak Ridge for like the whole nuclear and space program. You can actually see one of these moon boxes there, but it's literally a cargo box that they would load on the spacecraft back in the 60s to take to the moon and bring stuff back. And they had to be machined. They had to be fully, material controlled, and it was crazy the things he told me that had to be done with those things. They had to be analyzed with an X-ray to make sure they didn't have any cracks or anything, so on and so forth. But he told me a story one time of how he was machining one of these things, and he was doing it on a machine called a Milwaukee Millmatic. And it was like a 1960s or 50s era machine, ran off of a tape reader. And he always told me how, back then, these machines didn't have no cutter comp. If you wanted to comp your cutter, you had to, like, if you wanted to leave some more stock for something, because they got to where they had to leave, like 10 or 20 thousandths of stock, let the thing to be, the part to be normalized, and then finish it. He said in order to do that, you just have to grind your cutter down. So, and I know people are going to make fun of me for this. I don't care. So he would have to take like a 1/2 inch high-speed end mill and grind it down to 490 and then run the same program, because it'd take days to write a program on a tape reader.
Yeah.
I'm sure, Brad, I'm sure you've seen one.
Yeah.
And so you couldn't just change it like that, like you can now, where you just, in like 2 seconds, you change it and you can repost your code. So anyway, he was running one like that, and he ground it down, and he had to grind it down so much that I want to say it removed a certain part of the relief on the end mill or something. And of course, it was all straight line moves. There wasn't any kind of adaptive back then. And he forgot to set his feed knob because it was coming into a corner and just taking a full hog and cut. And I think he said he forgot to turn his feed knob from 100 to 50, because that's all you had was 150 or 0. And it hit that corner and just shot the end mill right through the moon box.
Oh, wow.
Scrapped it out. And that was like one of the most expensive things he's ever scrapped, because it's a government thing. That moon box might have been $50,000.
What material was it?
If I remember right, it was aluminum.
Okay.
Anyway, funny little story about old machining. But thinking about that, it's amazing how far we've come. Now you can just plug in a number right on the screen and change how much your tool cuts. And I realize that's a 20 or 30-year-old thing.
Do either of you still put in radius or diameter in your control?
No, I do.
Do you?
I never do. Not in the control. I let the computer handle it all.
So
Now,
you got to make sure the program's posted correctly to do that.
What do you mean?
all my
by that?
compensation's done on the
Yeah, yours, but Pat's. Because if you're
Oh.
putting that in It won't read G41, will it?
It will.
It will.
Yeah, it reads that. So that's actually kind of interesting. So, my last job we used Solid Cam, and it was set up the same way. You didn't really have options like you do in other softwares, but if you turned on the compensation box, the preview looked the same. Like your toolpath outline was outside your part if you're cutting outside profile. Um, but then on the machine, you would put in the diameter and it would offset accordingly, unless
Yep.
you forgot, and then it would scrap it. And I always wanted to change that to where you didn't have to put diameter in, but I just never got that deep into it because it's something that you have to do
Yeah.
through them or something. Because I've seen a lot of guys scrap parts because they came from a place where you didn't have to do that,
Yep.
and they wouldn't. And then they try to run a comp pass with a half-inch end mill, and
Yeah.
an 1/8 inch was in the comp table. Here it's funny. We do the same thing, except on the Fanuc machines, they use radius. The Haas uses diameter. I'm thinking about trying to find a way to change that because that's real easy to forget.
I want to say somebody at some point somewhere told me you can change that to be diameter.
Yeah,
I
you
would like
can on the
to.
Haas control.
Yeah.
But on the Fanix.
Oh, no. Yeah, you can. I worked
I've
at
never
a
messed
shop.
with it, but
I worked at a shop years ago. I was just a programmer, and we had a guy come in. I told him not to hire him. The guy came in the interview, said he had no machining experience, but he said he watched a lot of YouTube videos, and he had plenty of experience to set up a machine. And I was like, don't hire him. Hire the other guy that actually has experience. They hired him, and I posted a proven code to him, gave it to him, and he came back. He said, hey, the machine's alarming out. I'm like, all right, whatever. I'll just repost it. It's worked before. I'm doing something wrong. So I went through this like 3 times, and I finally was like, I'm going to go out there and see what the fuck this guy's doing. And I get out there, and an alarm's out, and I look, and he's got diameter put in everything. I'm like, you got to take that out. He's like, no, you don't. He said, that's supposed to be there. I'm like, no, you got to take that out. Take it out and hit cycle start, it'll work. So he did it in front of him, hit cycle start, ran, no problem. He's like, you're programming wrong. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm like, this is how we program here. He said, well, the YouTube video I watched says you got to put in the diameter in. I'm like, no, you don't. I said, not how our cam is set up here. Like, it doesn't need to be in there. And he argued with me. And so I brought him into the program, and there's like 4 of us. And I'm like, you tell them that we're programmed wrong. And he did. And everybody just laughed at him. Like, that's not how we program here. It's not going to work. He's like, well, you guys need to change the way you program so it works that way. And they ended up firing him the next day.
good. Yeah.
But that machine alarmed out when it read a G41 if you had a diameter in there because it was trying to comp
more than
it can comp.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, the way that I always do it, and I think if you're not actually touching off the diameter of your tools in the machine, or like maybe you have a tools that are outside the machine where you're always actually getting the measured diameter of your tool. We don't care about that. We don't need that precise all the time. Then I'll leave, that column is all zeros for the diameters for my tools. All I've got is lengths. And then any other numbers would be your your diameter wear offsets or your length wear offsets.
Yeah.
And then, use a G41 whenever I'm dialing in a fit, and I can adjust my wear offset by a couple thousandths. But I always leave in the CAM software, I always leave it set to compensate in the computer.
Yep.
Unless it's like, a tight tolerance where I want to use my wear offset, then I'll turn that on. But then you're just typing in, 1,000th or 2,000ths or tenths or whatever.
Yeah.
There's minor adjustments from there. But I like doing it that way and avoiding that whole diameter situation altogether, just because you can have what you're talking about, Pat, where you end up forgetting, and there was an 1/8 inch in there the last time, that sort of thing. And then, an end mill is cutting 3/16 further over than it's supposed to.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen it so many times. And the thing that's interesting, now I'm using Fusion, and I believe Mastercam was this way too. When you go to the comp menu, there's actually options. So it's, computer, control, and then I don't remember what all the others are because I always use control.
There's in computer, your compensation will be done in computer, in the control, wear, or inverse wear, I think are the 4 options.
Gotcha.
So then you can, is it a G42 that uses it, or I guess reverses the compensation direction?
Yeah. because you got
That
G43,
would make sense.
G42 for calm.
Yeah.
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 So it's just it's interesting for one to have that option, and then it does change how your toolpath preview looks, and that actually took me some adjusting, because when you set it to control, your preview line is your profile.
Yeah.
Instead of being still offset, which is what I was used to with solid cam. That took a little bit to get used to, because I look at that and it's like, wait a minute, that ain't right.
Right.
So when you
works
simulate
fine.
and the toolpath line is on feature geometry, tool center feature geometry, how does it simulate? Does the simulation automatically adjust?
Yeah, it simulates correctly. That was the other thing that took some getting used to, because it would simulate right, but the preview wouldn't look right.
Yeah. So like
So-
whenever you're looking at the toolpath preview, is that what you're talking about, where you can see all the lines?
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, because it's always following the center point of the tool. Got that white monster. Hell yeah, brother.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So in mine, I have the option to do toolpath center with compensation. So then my toolpath lines are offset by the tool radius, or I can do tool center on feature geometry,
Oh, okay.
which is
Interesting.
probably something you had in there too.
Mm.
That would drive
Right.
me nuts to see that.
Oh yeah,
What?
trust me, it still gets me every now and then.
Seeing your toolpath lines on the feature center line.
Well, I mean, if you're, I guess if you're compensating in the control, then yeah.
That's what it shows up. I haven't
No,
tried the other options.
I don't ever do that, so I've never even looked at it that way. I think I've done it on accident. Actually, I did do it on accident once. I accidentally set it to compensate in the control when I was dialing in like a 2-inch NPT thread on a casting, and then
Oof.
the tool ran a little bit further over than I anticipated.
Yuck.
Just scrapped the part, the tool was fine. So I had to get a new casting though, which was actually, you know what? This is the part right here.
Oh, show and tell.
It was on this thread right here.
Hmm.
Now this isn't the one that I scrapped. I scrapped this one for another reason. I don't remember why. But
What the heck, Cam?
I know. Actually, you know what it was? It had a 6/8 thread tolerance on some tapped holes on here, and the bore was a little bit too big. But yeah,
Oh.
that's the thread that I jacked up there. And that thread mill came in to actually start cutting that thread and just went way over here. So it was like a big oblong hole.
Hey, maybe it would fit like the next size up,
Right.
or the next two sizes
If
up.
it was like a 4-inch NPT in here.
You know, Pat, I
Um,
was gonna say,
mhm.
your old boss that had to grind cutters. The first two shops I worked at, we'd always send out our high-speed tool and dig ground, so we always have undersized cutters for stuff like that.
Mm.
They work great for like quarter pin heads, because we'd always do them in the Bridgeport. So if you had a head that was a random size, you could grab a high-speed that's been cut undersized, so you're not using a 1/2 inch for a 420. You'd always find like a 450 or something. So then that was always great.
That
And
is
sometimes
neat.
if you were cutting a slot or something, you could, do it on center line, grab an undersize, and then step it up. And,
Mhm.
trying to do both handles or try to offset was always, you could do it, but
Right. Takes more time.
But I
mean,
don't. God, I've had a couple companies call me, hey, do you want us to sharpen your end mills? I'm like, I don't really want to deal with like undersized end mills.
no, and that's kind of what I figure like diameter comp probably stemmed from, because it was probably a lot more common for shops to have regrinds back then. But maybe unless you're buying like super high end tooling,
Yeah.
I just don't see the sense in it.
No. I run a tool until it either breaks or the corners are chipped out, and then I'm changing it out.
Yeah. Throw the bin. Let's go ahead and hit the kind of the other big one here. Metrology equipment, where to spend money and where you can be cheap. I mean, to me, it's one of those things. It's just like with buying power tools or something like that. If it's something you use a lot, buy something nice. If it's something you're going to use infrequently, you might be able to step it down a little bit. So like a tape measure, buy a really nice tape measure. I'm just kidding. No, I look at it like, micrometers, calipers, stuff like that. Those need to be good. Those need to be Miss Toyo, Brown Sharp, that kind of thing. There are some pretty good deals out there for stuff that maybe you don't use as much, like pin gauges or gauge blocks, that kind of thing. But it really does depend on your shop. I mean, if you use gauge blocks a lot or you're doing that kind of tight work, you probably should have a good, lab grade set of gauge blocks.
I think it also depends on how critical it is that you hit those dimensions and can verify it. It's like if you're doing parts that have like flight critical tolerances on them, you don't want to be checking that with, a clapped out cheap set of mics or something.
Right. Like a Harbor Freight micrometer / C clamp.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got Craftsman set of micrometers.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know where I got them from. I've had them for 20 years. I don't use them though.
Yeah, Craftsman used to make some good stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, that's basically the gist of it. Myself, if I'm buying something that I need to be able to measure tenths with, I'm not going to buy it cheap because you really can't afford to guess at that point. So I'm not going to get an import, whatever it might be, indicating micrometer or tenth indicator or whatever it might be. I'm going to get a good brand. We all know who they are.
I've got one of the things that I've been willing to buy that was cheap for inspection was thread gauges.
Oh yeah.
I got a shit ton of thread gauges from Haas for like stupid cheap.
Yep. I bought every one they offer.
Yeah. And like
at that point, if they don't work, I'll buy a new one.
Right.
Or, I'll replace it every year. Like for the price for that, like
now
it's not even worth signing out to be calibrated.
Right. I haven't had them calibrated. So I mean they could be off. Who knows? I doubt that they are, but
right.
But the price difference from a Haas one to like Balix, however you want to say that one. Yeah. It's like $200 difference.
Yeah. Thread gauges are outrageous. Like,
and two, there again, I mean, if you're doing those parts, if you get a big order and they're for like an aerospace customer or something like that, and especially if you can price it into the job, maybe it is worth getting a high end, Vermont or whatever thread gauge. But if it's got certification and it's in tolerance,
right,
it's just as good as anything else.
I would say things that move, you probably want to spend more money on. Things that are static, just like a thread gauge or gauge blocks or whatever, or 1, 2, 3 blocks. Then that's more acceptable to spend less money on.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'd recommend buying thread gauges as you can. Just buy a couple here and there.
Yeah,
I got hassled by somebody on eBay, whatever social media. They were like, I thread milled something. It was an odd size thread, but I had a thread gauge, and they're like, "You got a thread gauge, but you don't have a tap." Well, yeah. I mean, I might just buy a random ass thread gauge. Like, I'd rather have it than not have it. If it's up on Haas's website and I've never used it, and it's $18. It's there when I have it.
Some people, magic is so dumb. Like,
you just can't win with these people, can you?
All right, tap before I can buy a thread gauge. If I tap something, chances are I don't need to thread gauge it.
Right.
But if I drill the right size hole, is the right size before I tapped, and then I tapped it with a decent tap, chances are it's fine. Now, if I thread mill it, I definitely need a thread gauge.
Absolutely.
And if you got a bunch of single point thread mills in, and at some point you're going to get that random size that you need, you might as well have the thread gauge available already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or rent it from MachinistToolRentals.com.
Practical Machinists, you're going to set up a tool rental. That's next.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, if you got, a micrometer or something that moves, chances are you should spend some good money on it. And chances are it's going to last longer too. You're just going to have my Mitutoyo mic set that I have. I've had it for 15 years.
Dude, I feel like the Mitutoyo mics just never go bad. We've got some probably 30, 40 years old.
Yeah.
That we still use.
Yep.
And calipers as well. I mean, they can, I don't know if stretch is a proper term or whatever, but like, when you close them and you hold them up to the light and like down at the tips, you can see a gap. Like that kind of stuff can be repaired. So you can, even if you buy a $300 set of, waterproof digital calipers, 8-inch calipers, you can send them off to be fixed. There's plenty of companies that do metrology repair. So,
I got my same 6-inch Brown and Sharp from 20 years ago. I've sent it out 2 or 3 times just to be reconditioned.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, I don't use digital calipers, so I don't like them.
I love digital. I started with
Yeah.
I started with dial, and I still use dial occasionally. Like if it's somewhere that I can't fit a micrometer into, I'll use some. We've got like a dedicated nice set of dial calipers that we, you know, only ever take out for very specific scenarios like tight tolerance stuff. So with those, I'll take them out, and I can usually get within a few tenths with those, like a good set of dials. So they still have their place, in my opinion. But I do like digital just for everyday around the shop use,
Yeah.
especially because you can zero, switch to metric, that sort of thing.
I feel like with the dial caliper, I can get a couple tenths on there.
Yeah.
Where digital, aren't they usually 5/10
Yeah.
increments?
At 5/10 graduation.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't care. I'm not if I need to be checking down to the tenths, then I should be using something else.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a feel to it of like,
There is.
you know, you kind of trick yourself into thinking that you're getting that close, but you're not. You're using calipers. I mean, I don't like to use calipers for fits less than like +or-3
Yeah.
personally.
No, same.
Same.
Now, but
What
like
about telescoping gauges, Pat? How good are you with them?
I hate them things.
Really?
Unfortunately, I've had to get used to using them because we don't really have dial bore gauges here, but
Yeah.
I have a set.
I love
have, I think-
gauges. You don't like them?
No,
Oh, I love
don't.
them. I'm pretty
do.
sure. I mean, I can get with an attempt with them.
Oh, easily. Yeah. I
and
do.
there are
It's-
people that are like, no, they're not accurate. Like,
They're
no,
plenty
if
fucking
you-
accurate.
If you know
I've
how to
seen-
use it and you know how to do it,
Right.
That's 100% a skill and feel thing.
oh yeah,
It took me
Mhm.
months to actually be reliable with that,
oh yeah.
Okay.
using them all the time. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I can get within a tenth or two pretty easily. And I mean, I've compared it to the CMM. I mean,
Right.
it works.
I've checked
seen
bores, and I mean, I'll check it 2 or 3 times, and that fucker is the exact same every time.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we even compare. Like, I'll measure something and I'll have Sam double check it too. We both get the same thing.
It's always scary though when you do it wrong one time and you check and it's like way over or way under, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah. Or when
Yeah.
that happens, like I take a second, like after I pop it out of the bore, I'll like set it down and then come back to it in like a minute or two and then measure it, and it's big.
Yeah.
And like they end up like just slowly expanding out
Yeah.
over time. So I'll
I always
tighten it and then measure it and then do it right away.
take like 3 or 4 measurements.
I mean,
Just
yeah.
You have to.
honestly, just because I'm not used to them, especially. So it's like if I can't get, within a few tenths 3 or 4 times in a row, I'm like, okay, Mark, you measure it.
Yeah.
He's an old timer, so he's a master of the stupid things.
I did buy the Haas's dial bore gauges. They're great. I mean,
Yeah.
I got the thing right here. You can see the little blue thing right here. Can you see that?
Yep.
That's for setting the dial bore gauges. That's great. That's nice.
Hey, you get one of those.
Yeah, I used to use Mike's, but I got that thing where you set the gauge blocks in and adjust it.
Oh, I need to do that. I
It's so
definitely
nice.
need to get that. Yeah. Now dial bore gauges, honestly, I feel like once you get them dialed in, I feel like they move on me.
I do too. I've had a couple times where I'm checking and I'm like, that doesn't seem right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I go back and re-zero it and it's off. I don't know why or how that happens. I don't know if maybe like the indicator slides out a little bit because it's just got that little like shaft, whatever,
Yeah.
clamp on it.
Right.
I don't know if it like is sliding out a little bit over time or something, but I've noticed that like I can calibrate at the beginning of the day and then throughout the day it'll actually move a little bit.
I'm a big fan of like old school checking parts, gauge blocks.
Yeah.
Rather than, I mean, I'll use the CMM if I have to, but I'll resort to gauge pins, gauge blocks. I mean, I got an indicator and gauge blocks up right now. I'm checking height on all these parts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like we do such low quantity of everything that it doesn't really make sense to be throwing everything on the CMM.
No.
Because you got to program the CMM.
Yep.
And I mean, you can do just like manual checks really quick on there also. But it's like I've got to check it in the machine before I even take it out, so I might as well just check it the right way the first time
That's
and then
actually,
not have to do it again.
I will say, probably the best maybe piece of measuring equipment you can buy is a probe. I have used the snot out of our spindle probes.
Yeah.
Since Infusion, it's super easy to program a probe. I mean, I didn't have that with SolidCam. I use that so often. And, I will say I usually try to check it a couple different ways, but the probe just helps give me some confidence that okay, I'm close, or I fully trust it. I'm just going to double check it with a conventional method. That's very nice method.
Yeah. I'm telling you,
Some will
man.
argue they're not
That's
accurate though, because if your machine's out,
that's
Right.
gauge pins or dial bore gauge, mics, whatever.
I'll say the only times that I've had accuracy issues, it's been the probe. It's never been the machine. It's always been, you know, the probe being out of calibration. Just over time, it moves around a little bit or whatever. But even still, like if you're checking in one direction, say you throw an indicator on your probe and rotate it, and it's out of thousandths. If you're checking in one direction, it'll
Yeah.
still give you the correct measurement.
yeah,
But the center line of that measurement would be off.
Mhm.
Like if you were to check a bore and your probe that is, your rotational tolerance is out on the tip of the probe, it'll still give you the correct dimension for that bore, but the center of that bore won't be in the correct spot. So
isn't there a way to rotate the probe so it's always touching the same spot on the ball on the bore?
yeah, there is, but I mean that's got to be built into like the actual program, like the actual sub program for the probe. So I don't care enough to mess with that. I just keep them indicated and calibrated.
Yeah, it's always
roll
good
it.
to check.
Yeah.
and recalibate every so
I'm not
often.
checking tenths every single time I probe
and
something.
recalibate
day,
every so
so.
often.
But no, the probe is great, and what you need to do, Pat, is use the
Yeah,
probe to update your wear offset for a tool. Don't
haven't
mess
done
with
that.
that.
Yeah.
You'll love it. What I'll do is have that probe cycle at the end of a program, and I'll do like a fan cycle and then the probe cycle. So it blows the part off, then checks a fit, and then that probe will update a certain toolpath. That toolpath will be the only toolpath in that whole program that doesn't have optional block skip. So
Mhm.
after I run the entire program, turn on optional block skip, hit cycle start, it's already updated your wear offset for you and everything, and it'll go through, run that finish pass again, and then you're done.
That's cool.
And if it's like a plus or minus one, that'll work no problem. Once it gets into like, 1,000th or less, then I'm checking it religiously myself and verifying. Like I'll still check it with the probe just because it's so easy. So it'll, the probe will run. I'll get my dimension off of that, and then I'll check it manually and then compare. Like, all right, we're both doing the same thing. We're within a tenth of each other. I'm definitely good to go ahead and make my offset manually. But yeah, plus or minus
We
2 or whatever, use a probe.
I've done that a handful of times, but all at my last job where I had to do all that by hand. I could not do any of that from CAM.
Manual probe
And
cycles.
right. And not that it's terribly hard, it's just a lot more work. So we generally only did it for bigger runs because it just wasn't worth the time investment otherwise. But it was really cool to be able to do that. And, at that, then I had to do like go to commands. So, and if then type stuff,
Right.
like if the measurement is, small and change, got to go through and figure out what the wear offset macro is, change it by this result, and then go to this line to rerun the finish pass, check it again, all that stuff. It's
Yeah.
really cool. It's a lot of work.
Well,
But now having that capability to just post it right out of Fusion is awesome.
yeah, and that's still good experience to have. I still do that same thing on like production runs or quote unquote production runs. Depends what you consider that. Maybe we make 100 parts that have a tight tolerance fit on it. I'll have it probe every 2 or 3 parts, and adjust my wear offset so that the next one will run, or the next one will be even closer to the middle of tolerance because I have the tolerance for the probe. Its adjustment range is smaller than the actual tolerance for that feature. And so no matter what, it stays within there. And if it's ever outside of that, then you can have it go back and rerun, or it'll update your wear offset, then go back and run that tool again on that individual part. And then after that, continue on. But yeah, like learning all the if then stuff is nice, especially when it comes to probing.
Oh yeah. We've gone pretty long here. We didn't get to a few of these, but I want to go ahead and run through our tip for the day, and then we can wrap up. I've got one, unless you guys have one you're dying to share.
Go for it.
My tip for this episode is going to be chill. So I'm going to actually piggyback off last episode when we had Luke with us, and he got a little philosophical with his tip. So the thing I've been thinking on for this one is about apathy and how prevalent it seems to be in this trade. Apathy is basically when you get to where you don't care about things. You don't care about your job. You don't care about your employer. You don't care about your coworkers. Even gets to the point you don't care about the work you're doing. It's poisonous. And I'm speaking from experience on this one because I got to that point several months ago at my previous job. I got to where I didn't care. I didn't like when I would wake up in the morning, I felt almost like a sense of disappointment of like, okay, great, I woke up. Now I got to go deal with this crap. And that's not good. That's not good for your immediate health or your long term health or anything. And my biggest tip for anybody listening to this, if you feel yourself in that situation, you really need to evaluate what your goals are and what makes you happy. And if your job is doing that to you, you need to either find a way to correct it with your job or find a new job. Even if it's not in this trade. Maybe this trade is not for you. But there's always something else you can do to help remove that from your life. Because I found at the height of me just not caring, it wasn't just my job I stopped caring about. It was my life, my relationships, my friendships, everything that I did, I was apathetic towards. I just didn't care. And I kind of got to where, I would go to work, just bum around there and do what I had to, go home and not do anything there either. And that's not healthy. So that's kind of my tip is if you find yourself feeling just like you don't care about anything anymore, your spark is gone, you might need to look at some lifestyle changes.
Good tip. I think everybody kind of gets to that point at some time in their life.
Yep. Sometimes it's temporary. Sometimes
Yeah.
you just need something cool to happen to kind of bring you back. And I had that happen a few times. I went through several stages of a sort of a roller coaster of, man, this is awesome. I'm having fun to, man, I just don't care anymore. And there's always some underlying issues that could be causing that. Something up here, who knows? But, it's just something to definitely watch for. It's something that sneaks up on you.
Yeah. I think figuring out what you truly value and then putting your energy into that definitely helps.
Yep.
Figuring out what your goals are, where you want to end up. Find
Now,
the things that you're actually passionate about and bring and life's not all about finding things that make you happy and bring you joy. You know,
mhm.
if you always chase everything that makes you happy, then you're not going to end up being happy. It's not the
No.
way it works.
Sometimes you have to find happiness. I promise that all of our tips are not going to be deep philosophical nonsense, but
Just
you
stay
know,
tuned for Pat's positive affirmation Instagram coming soon.
no,
I want to see it. I want to see you every morning, just looking into everybody's eyes.
I don't know that actually wouldn't be a bad thing, but yeah, I'm too busy with be a yahoo to start that. So we're good to wrap up, fellas.
Yeah.
That's all for this episode of the Impractical Machinist podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the Practical Machinist YouTube channel so you never miss an episode.
Don't forget to give us that 5-star rating we talked about earlier. Drop a comment below if you learned something from us or if you have anything else you want to pass on.
If you have any follow-up questions, you can DM us on Instagram, Practical Machinist Forum, or the Discord in our Instagram bios. Check out our Instagram as well at JobShopperTN, at Machining is Cool, and at Marvel Machining.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Keep those chips flying.
Be a yahoo.